Bonjour, bienvenue everyone. Welcome to Bonjour Paris Live. I am Sylvia Davis, culture editor for France Media and the host today for our fourth and final session in Paul Declerck's series on how to demystify wine. So in part one, we learned about the 5-point method. In part two, about the regions. In part three, about smell and taste. And now Paul is tying it all together in part four to crack the code of quality and how to get the best value. Friendly reminder to consume alcohol responsibly in accordance with local regulations. And I will now invite Paul to join us. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
It's lovely to see you.
Thank you very much. And to see you
And
too.
we're very excited about the final session. And just for any participant that has not seen the previous events, let me just quickly introduce you. Paul, born into a winemaking family in France's Loire Valley. Paul Declerck works at Cult Wines, the world's leading fine wine investment company. Paul has hosted dozens of wines tastings for beginners and professionals and is known for his clear, relaxed style and in particular for his passion for making wine more accessible, one glass at a time. You can follow Paul's work on his website, and you will find his website and his book under resources if you click resources on your screen. And of course, you can take his online course and attend his tastings in person if you happen to be in London. And I'll let you, Paul, tell us more about that. So it's over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sylvia. Today, we are going to talk about the secret of great wines. So let's jump straight to it. Uh, there we go. So I'm going to start. If you've seen the first videos, I'm going to introduce myself again and what I do. It helps a lot to understand who I am and why I'm here as well. So I'm from a family of winemakers in the Loire Valley in France. I work for a company called Cult Wines, with the largest wine investment company in the world. And I wrote a book called How to Appreciate Wine. It explains the 5 points method. The main reason why I wanted to write this book is because a lot of people, including, for example, my father, have told me that they have been drinking a lot of wine over the years, but they're still not, they can easily tell if the wine is good or not, if they like it or not. But when you ask them why, they're not able to tell you. And a lot of the people I work with are high net worth individuals. They might be old, they might be young, but when it comes to wine, they don't only want to invest in it, they actually want to learn about it and to understand why these wines are worth that much money. So it's a very interesting point that we are covering today because, well, why is a wine worth £1,000 and the other one is worth £5, right? Or why all the critics agree that this wine is great and actually I don't like it, right? It's a very important question. So we're going to work on this today. This is France's wine map. The reason why I put it is really to explain where I'm from. I'm from pretty much where that dot here is, somewhere in the Loire Valley, which is the western part of France. People from the south would say this is the north, but actually it's not. The north is much further. Anyway, it is currently about 43 degrees at the moment where I'm from. It's incredibly hot in the Loire Valley, in the whole Europe. But it's a bit cooler here in London where I live at the moment. So what to expect today? I'm going to give you cool tips, especially financially. We might go through a sensory game, which is what we've done mostly last time. But I'm going to give you a clear guide, really. You're going to feel a bit more confident, especially budget-wise, when you are at the restaurant. So what do you need? Well, you need a bit your attention, of course. You need a bit of interest. If you're here, I assume you like wine and you have an interest in France as well. And you can, like me, have a glass of wine next to you. A glass is always good. So I like to remind you, if you've seen the first videos, you know what I'm talking about. This is something I like to start all my wine tastings with. We are here to create moments. And what I mean by that is that anything you think you possess, think about your house, your car, your clothes, anything like this that is physical, that you think belong to you, in 100 years, when you will be dead, they will no longer belong to you. They will either not exist anymore, or they will actually belong to someone else that you might even not know, that might not be related to you. Now, there's only one thing that no one can take away from you, and it's your memory. It's these little moments you've created. They might be good, they might be bad, but they're actually what constitute you. And they're very important. Now, for me, nothing matters more and nothing creates better moment than a good bottle of wine, friends, and family. This is why I live. This is why I'm around, to create these moments. Make sure you try to create these moments that you like as often as possible. This is my philosophy, and I highly encourage anyone listening to do the same. So this is a bit about fine wine investment. We again, I usually mention it because it always there's always a few questions about it when I mention I work in wine investment. Basically, our clients give us some capital. With this capital, we buy cases of fine wine. We then store them in perfect condition here in the UK, just outside London, and then we sell it for the client also later on for a profit. We've been around for nearly 20 years. This is our average return since 2007. And yeah, wine has been a great investment as an asset class. In the last 3 years, it's been performing negatively, but it actually means that it's doing fantastically. It's a great time to buy right now because it's finally turning around, basically. So if you scan this QR code, you're going to bring to it's going to bring you to Cult Wine's investment website, and from there you can have a deeper look. But don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any question. This is my book, as explained earlier. It's for everyone, but I explained in it the 5 points method, and I've made it for really beginners, but also intermediate people who already know a bit about wine. So the first part is about the practice, because I don't like to start with the theory. For me, the theory is the boring part of wine, right? You don't need to know all the sub-regions of New Zealand to be able to enjoy this fantastic Pinot Noir from New Zealand, right? It tastes like this. So the book starts with the practice, and then I have also put the theory, which is, well, yeah, what beginners need to know about wine, where it grows, how is red wine made, how is white wine made. We're going to talk about prices today. So what makes a great price, what makes a great wine, etc. So it's all explained in there, and I hope you get it and you will be happy. If you buy it directly from my website, I can even sign it for you before shipping it to you. So don't hesitate. I have also created an online video course which is available here, and if you scan this, if you type this this code here, Bonjour 50, then you get a 50% discount on the course. So hopefully more of you will join. Some of you have already done, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. All right, let's jump straight to it. What makes a great wine? It's a very important question. And the very short answer to that is actually great grapes. Now, great grapes, if you ask any winemaker, they will tell you, my job, what I do, represents only roughly 20% of the quality of the wine. 80% or more comes from having great grapes. Now, it's not everything, of course, because the winemaker can ruin a very good wine by making the wrong decisions. But the quality of the grapes and the quality of the juice that comes out of the grapes is what will make the wine great or not. This is very important. And again, it's not necessarily me talking, it's not a wine critic talking, it's the wine producers, the winemakers, the people who make the wines. They're usually very humble. But anyway, so what do we mean by great grapes? Because that's an important topic, right? We need to understand this a bit better to understand wine. Well, it starts by what you're planting. Now, we are looking here at something very specific, which is in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. You might have heard this term before. It's a wine in the south of France, in the Rhone region. Now, Châteauneuf-du-Pape is famous not necessarily for its hills, because it's actually a plateau. It's pretty flat, but it's famous for this galets here, right? You can see there's almost no greenery between the rows. And it's a very, very dry land. Now, exactly like any tree or any plant, if you plant the wrong tree in the wrong region, it won't grow. It won't grow beautiful fruits, right? You can try to plant an orange tree in Norway, it will not produce oranges. Same if you try to plant an olive tree in Norway, right? Or if you plant one of their pine trees, their fantastic pine trees in Morocco, it will not work, right? The tree will die. It's the same. You have to plant the right type of tree, the right grape at the right place. And this is the first important decision. If you have the right heel and if you have the right grape, then the vine will produce some great grapes and great wines. But as you can imagine, in this case, you need to have very water resistant, drought resistant vineyards, because otherwise they won't produce anything. But it's the same again every year, everywhere. If you have a very steepy hill, you need a type of tree that will grow deeper roots and yeah, that will produce something again important. So the first decision the winemaker has to make is to plant the right grape. The second thing you need is going to be the right weather, obviously. This is something you can't do much about. But if you have the right grapes and you have the right weather, then you should have some decent grape. What do we mean by right weather is very often something sunny. You want a decent amount of rain, but at the right time, because obviously drought is a growing concern in the wine world with global warming. And in my region in the Loire Valley, I was discussing a few years ago already with a producer who was explaining to me that some of the grapes just don't grow because they are lacking the core element, which is water. If the fruit doesn't have enough water from the roots, then the berry is going to stay very small, highly concentrated, maybe too acidic. Not right. It needs the right amount of water. So if you have the right weather, you might produce great wine. If you have too much water, which is again often the time in modern years, because well, it might rain a lot. Look, Bordeaux is obviously the most famous wine region in the world. Bordeaux in 2023 and 2024 had very, very difficult years. And the main reason is because it rained way too much. The temperature never rose above 30, 32 degrees, something like that. And it rained the whole summer, which was terrible. What this makes, it grows mildew, it grows some rot that, that is not looking nice. And it's making wine very hard because yeah, you have to fight these diseases and the grape doesn't grow to maturity enough. It will start rotting before turning properly the sugar into alcohol. So it's not, you need again the right line. If you walk the line, if you are somewhere between the right amount of rain and a decent exposure to sun, you will have the great wine. Now, this is what will help also. If your vines are old or if they are young, it will produce different wine. Now, you might have not thought of this before, but if you start getting into wine, you might have read before old vines or vieilles vignes, as we say in French. And why do they mention this on the bottle? Well, think about it this way. If you have a young person, they're usually full of energy and they say a lot of stupid things, right? That's kind of what youth is. A lot of energy, a lot of blah blah and useless production, right? An old person is much wiser. They will produce way less, but the quality is usually better. This is exactly the same with trees and with vineyards and vines in general. They will produce way less leaves, but also way less grapes. And in wine in general, you can't have quality and quantity. You have to make a decision. Usually, the vast majority of the people, the producers, will go for the quantity because this is what makes money, right? If you can sell 1,000,000 bottles instead of 1,000, then it's going to be easier for you. But there are less than 1% of the winemakers in the world that will focus on quality. And these people will try to reduce the production as much as possible because the smaller the production, the better the wine will be. This is exactly that. They will want to have vines that are older, much older. Now, this here says 35 plus years. There are vines in the world that are over 100 years old. And they're still producing. As you can imagine, they're not producing much, but they are still producing. Just so you understand, vineyards will not usually produce grapes within the first year or two. They start producing grapes that are deemed good enough from year 3 or 4. So if you decide to change your vineyard, you have to, well, remove it just after the harvest usually, then wait at least a year or two. In organic regions, it can go up to 7 to 10 years of what we call jachère, which means absolutely nothing. And then you plant, and you have to wait another 3 or 4 years minimum before you start having grapes that are good enough. Now, some of the producers, for example, who focus on quality will not take any grape before another 15 years because, again, they're not good enough. And or they will put it in a lower classification or something like that. For example, in Burgundy, if they have just replanted a Grand Cru, they will not put it into the Grand Cru blend. They will put it directly into the regional Burgundy average wine, the entry quality, basically. So, yeah, this is why it's so important to have the right grape and the tree as old as possible. Now, obviously, trees die, and an entire field of old trees is going to be sporadic. You're going to have some holes and in the whole distribution, and that affects production, that affects quantity. So you can't have both. You can't have quantity and quality. It's not possible. All right, let's keep going. Another very, very important thing to do is, well, picking the best grapes. So I don't know, maybe some of you have done harvesting before. It's quite famous in wine regions where you go work for about 2, 3 weeks or up to a month to do the grape harvest. What they usually tell you to do is to be very careful. And well, again, it depends, right? But when you see a grape like this that is very uneven, that is, not looking homogenic, they tell you leave it. We don't want this because this is a right grape. This is a right grape, but this is definitely not right. So you can't have this going into the blend. It would not taste good. It's exactly the same as when you buy grapes from the shop to eat, right? You will look at your all the grapes in front of you. Some of them will be absolutely perfect. Some of them will be overripe, right? They will be a bit already turning into alcohol. Some of them will be underripe and they don't taste good. You usually leave them on the side. It's exactly the same when you harvest. If you don't care about the quality, you take everything. Machine harvesting is a big thing in the world, in the wine world. There's nothing wrong with with machine harvesting, but the main problem with it is that it takes everything. It doesn't do a selection. So it's yeah, if you want to be very, if you want to look for the quality, you have to hand harvest. For example, champagne. In champagne, in order to have the champagne label, to be able to put the stamp on your label champagne, one of the criteria, there are literally dozens and dozens, but one of the criteria is that it needs to be harvested by hand because again, it brings better quality. Some appellations like this, especially the ones that are the focus on the quality, will require hand harvesting. If I can give you another one that is not related to this, but for example, any appellation in France will not tolerate irrigation. You cannot irrigate your vines if you want the appellation Champagne, if you want the appellation Chablis, if you want the appellation Anjou Village, for example, which is where I'm from, right? If you irrigate your vines, you're not, you cannot call your wine like this. It will be labeled Vin de France, which is something, you know, the lowest appellation you can get in the French classification. So yeah, picking the best grapes is very important, selecting them at harvest, and just after the harvest, I'm going to show you something else that is very cool and being used more and more, is this. It's called laser sorting. Now, it's exactly what you think it is. This is a treadmill with all the grapes coming from the harvest, literally coming right from the harvest, coming onto this little treadmill. Then the winemaker is going to put some criteria into the machine. The machine is going to laser check every single one of these grapes that are going through the treadmill, every single one. And the criteria might be the size, for example. If the size is too small, if the size is too big, it's pushed away. If it can be the color, it can be the shape. If the shape is wrong, it's kicked out. Fascinating. Now the way it works, I could show you a little video, but if you look for laser sorting grapes online, you will find them on YouTube, etc. The way it works is under all here, there are little wind spray. I don't even know how to, it blows a tiny bit of air and it basically pushes the grape away. So the grape ends up outside of the tray and it's not deemed good enough, basically. Now, something else that is used more and more by winemaker these days is what they call the bath. So let's say you're in Bordeaux in 2024, which was a terrible vintage, again, very, very wet, and your grapes they've gone through laser sorting, but it's not good enough because quite a lot of them don't have enough sugar in them. And obviously you want the sugar to make sure you create enough alcohol. So you will have all the grapes drop into a bath that has a liquid that is basically measuring that is sorting the grapes by how much sugar they have inside their juice. Usually they set it up at 12.5 degrees. Any grape that is higher in sugar than 12.5 will go to the bottom of the bath, and everything that has less than 12.5 will be floating on top and slowly be pushed away and again got out of the production. So it's fascinating. Technology today is helping producers to make wine even in very, very difficult vintages. And this is life-changing for winemakers. There used to be a time when in a bad vintage, there was no production, absolutely zero production. It's no longer the case, right? Wine producers in Bordeaux, like in many other places, are still able to make wine even in bad harvests, even in bad vintages. When it's been raining the whole summer, they can still harvest and make very, very decent wine, thanks to these tools. Now, as you can imagine, this is not for everyone's pockets. You need to be rich enough to either buy these machines or hire them. And if you hire them, you need to be the first one to put an option on it because the whole neighborhood also wants to hire it. It's a real challenge. The best option is to have a great vintage, so then you don't have to hire these, basically. But so we are going slowly towards high quality wine here, right? We have the right grapes. We have the right planted tree. We have the right grapes now. So we're going to look at what is great winemaking, because this is important. So when you are a winemaker, in field, throughout the whole year, you have to make dozens and dozens and dozens of decisions. The most important one is probably going to be the day of the harvest. If you harvest too late, the grape will have too much sugar, too much alcohol content. If you harvest too early, they will have too much acidity and not enough alcohol. You have to harvest right at the perfect moment. But it's not the only one, right? You need to prune the vine correctly so then it produces enough, but not too much grape. So this is just in the vineyard. When the grapes are harvested, then you make many, many, many different decisions as well. Are you going to ferment your wine in stainless steel or in oak barrels or in concrete eggs? Right? Why not? That's more and more seen today. Concrete or even plastic eggs. My cousin makes make a very, very good wine from an egg. One of the quality I can briefly explain of this is that in a square shape like this, basically the liquid inside is pretty stable. Where actually naturally in the concrete egg in the egg shape, it's going to sort of circulate inside, which is fascinating, right? And it has benefits to this circulation. Then, are you going to create the malolactic fermentation or not? Malolactic fermentation can be positive, for example, in red wine or when you want to reduce a bit the acidity. If you want to keep a wine that is very crisp, that is very light, you want to keep that acidity. Very often you block that malolactic fermentation, which is a natural process. It's a second fermentation, basically. So in general, if I have to make a big rule, very often the white wines don't have the malolactic fermentation and the red wines do have a malolactic fermentation. Your Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, very often it doesn't have the malolactic because you want to keep that freshness, that acidity, right? Cold soak. Cold soak is in Burgundy, very famous in Burgundy. You harvest the grape, and as soon as you harvest them, you leave. It looks like pockets of ice. It's not exactly ice because it's around 3 to 5 degrees, but you leave these pockets on the cases, the boxes where the grapes come from. You leave it like this on top of this, and you leave it for 7 to 10 days. Why? To cool down from the outside temperature. It starts creating, it starts giving extra complexity to the wine. It brings it a bit of color that usually Burgundy doesn't have because it's a very northern region in France. So cold soaking is one of these things that are very subtle but very important for producers looking for quality, really, and extra complexity. Do you steer the lees? So when when the lees are being added, when the fermentation is happening, do you actually shake everything to make sure that do you expose the wine to more the skins or not? Do you use the natural lees that are on the skin, or do you actually add external natural yeast So this is something else that is very important. Natural yeast will create something that is more irregular over the years, but it brings something that is truly the terroir. It's actually coming from the grapes themselves. So you cannot be better than this, really. So this winemaker here has so many decisions to make, so many decisions. Stainless steel, is he going to use oak barrel? If so, is it going to be new oak? Is it going to be old oak that has been used? Is it going to be American? Is it going to be French oak? The toast level, right? Like, do you want it toasted properly or do you want it light? Very often they are medium, but not only. And you can have one that is heavy toasted and then 10 that are medium, for example. Right? It's like you can play around so much. Anyway, so many different decisions to make like this for the producer. This is what oak barrels look like in Burgundy, by the way. So yeah, when I don't know if you're aware of this, but you might have heard of the Angel's share. Because it's alcohol, it evaporates throughout the year. So and the wine will stay in these barrels for nearly 2 years. What they do, they can't have the wine exposed to oxygen. So the level will start going down, and very regularly, every maybe 4 months to 4 weeks to a month, they will top it up. So they will take the wine from one barrel and top it up to make sure that all the other barrels stay, well, at the right level. So then otherwise the oxidation would be too strong. Anyway, if you've never visited a vineyard that uses oak barrels, you have to. I cannot describe the smell when you walk into this room. It is incredible, absolutely stunning. And they use oak barrels in many regions, but not everywhere, right? If you go to New Zealand, where a producer is making the Cabernet Sauvignon again, Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand is not oaked, so they will only use stainless steel. It will smell, but it won't smell like this. Anyway, it's important to visit, to really understand and talk with the producer. All right, the last point, if you remember, is time. Why did I mention time? Well, time obviously is important here because it shows, it brings something that only time can bring, right? But when the wine is in the bottle, it is also very important to leave it some time. Well, you have to understand some wines, the wines that can age for decades and decades, will only get these what we call tertiary aromas over the years. They need at least 7 to 10 years to start bringing these, for example, forest floor. It literally smells like a forest after the rain when you smell this wine. For white wines from Burgundy, they will start bringing some honey flavors almost. Apricots, you know, the dried apricot you find in the Mediterranean, on the Mediterranean coast somewhere in Italy. Sometimes you have this dried apricot. This is what an old Burgundy, white Burgundy smells like. It's delicious. So yeah, time is one of the factors. It's very important to drink wine at the right time, at the perfect, when it's in its drinking window is very important. I prefer older wine. Some people, sorry for that. Give me a second. I prefer old wines, but not everybody does. So, yes, this is working. I was worried to lose you for a second. But yeah, not everybody does. So drink wine that you like, I like when they are a bit older. Now, how to know you are in the presence of a great wine? You've gone through the 5 points method with me before, but I'm going to take you through again point number 1 and point number 5, which are, in my opinion, the easiest to assess and the ones that are, that really talk about the quality. The first one is the intensity of the nose, and the second and the point number 5 is the length of the finish. So you remember, this is what the 5 points method looks like. We're going to talk about the intensity of the nose and the finish of the wine, which is here. The first point is the intensity of the nose. Now, a great wine smells very strong. A terrible wine doesn't smell like anything. Literally, the greatest wines in the world, you can smell them from the table. This is how strong they smell. This is how good they smell. But in order to assess this intensity of the nose, we're going to use our face as a scale. So you're going to put the glass below your chin, like I'm doing here. And if you can start smelling the wine from here, this is already very good. This is 9 or 10 points out of 10, right? If you can't and you have to raise to the bottom lip, this is a bit less good, let's say 6 or 7 points. Then you go up a lip. And if you really have to put your nose in the glass because you can't smell anything, this is 1 or 2 points. This is very bad, basically, right? So this is the intensity of the nose. The number 5 is what we call the finish of the wine. So the finish of the wine is after you swallow the wine, you literally start the clock and you count in seconds how long can you still taste this wine after you swallowed it. If it is, it's all written here. Anything between 0 and 10 seconds, that's terrible. Anything between 10 and 30 seconds is actually very good. And anything above 30 seconds is exceptional. My favorite wine, which is Chateau d'Yquem. Chateau d'Yquem is a sweet white wine from Sauternes. You can literally taste it for up to a minute after you swallowed it. Incredible wine. I highly recommend you to try. You will never forget. The first time you try Chateau d'Yquem, you will never forget it. Anyway, so point 1 and point 5 are your best friends to find out if this is a great wine or not. Remember, you might not like it because you don't like the flavors or you don't like white wine or you don't like red wine. This is valid for all the wines, even champagne. But at least you know you're in presence of a great wine. So that's the intensity of the nose. Actually, I just told you all this. This is the clock. So we can talk now about the price of wine. A lot of people believe that the price is what makes a great wine, right? If I'm spending £50 instead of £30, it must be better. My view on this is that actually most of the time it is true. There is a direct correlation between the quality of the wine and its price. Now, this is true up to a certain point. In my opinion, this is true up to £250. Let's say $250. Is a wine like Petrus, which is a very famous, very expensive wine, worth £4,000? I don't know. Maybe it is. It's very rare. But is it 100 times better than a wine at £40? No. I can guarantee you, no. This is not true. So between, let's say, 20 to 10 to £250, there is a direct correlation. The more you spend, the better will be the wine. So roughly. So you can be pretty, you can trust that, in my opinion. There will always be wines that are very cheap and absolutely delicious and very expensive and terrible. Yes, but this is the exception, not the rule. But what about the wine critics? Because that's another way to actually find out if the quality of the wine is high or low. Well, who are they first? The wine critics are professionals, right? You might have heard of Robert Parker. He created the 100 points wine method in the 70s, 80s, and he started writing these scores, 99 points, 98 points, etc. So Robert Parker is very important. Jane Anson is a female version of him, very, very different. But what they do, these people, they're basically professionals. They taste between 1,000 to 5,000 wines per year. Imagine how many that is per day. Just try to do the calculation. That's at least 10 per day, right? If not 50. But they all look at similar criteria, which are what inspired me to create the 5 points method. And the 5 points method is usually what they look at, right? They will look at the intensity of the nose. They will look at the lens on the palate, but they will also look at the balance of the wine, the intensity of the palate, etc. This type of things, that's what they will look at. And most of them would rate out of 100 points, but Jane Henson, for example, rates out of 20. I've given you some examples of the wine critics, their notes, basically what they say. So yeah, it's always interesting. This is about the 2025 Lafite, which is one of the most important wine in the wine world. And 2025 again is a great vintage. So 99 point, you can't go wrong with that. And you have a drinking window of probably 40 years. Yeah, look at that. He gave it, how much is that? That's 50 years drinking window, right? So very, very interesting. But that is it. Wine critics are very important. They will give you a clear indication as to if a wine is good or not. I trust wine critics a lot myself. And what is good is very often they're not influenced by price. So look at them. There's a website called Wine Searcher, which gives you not only the price of the wine you should be paying, but also all the wine critics for these wines. So the scores they've been given. Very important website. Anyway, that is pretty much to remind you that the most important critic is you. If you like something, this is because you like it. And that's it. It might not be the best or the most expensive wine in the world. If you like something, no one can take that away from you. And you go through this 5 points method. It helps you not only to know what to look for in a glass of wine to assess its quality, but also to rate it out of 100 points. So the 5 points method is your best friend. And on How to Appreciate Wine, my website, you can get one of these books where you have 50 of these wine tasting sheets. And that helps you create your own little diary, really.